compensation.
Sure.
I'm going to give you a
Yeah, but that's something we can give and something we can take away.
So you're not, you know, if you're worried about when you say you gave me an 8% raise because you gave me a stipend of 3%, I got that stipend last year, so you're really not giving me that. You're giving me an increase with it, but I got that last year, and that's all I'm saying. It's just it's a numbers, you know, it's a numbers thing, but understand that the only difference that you would do for that employee is that you didn't do last year was give them a pay raise. You know, that
To compare percentages, you would have to add the stipend to their salary.
From last year, because they were given stipends last year.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Right, and I figured out, you know, a guy who's making $30 grand a year, right, a $1,200 stipend is about 3% pay increase.
No, it's more than that.
But again, I got that last year, so you
can't stipend. You got it away anytime.
Right.
And that's not permanent. Okay. An increase that's permanent.
I gave you a sheet. I would like to read it to you because, as you probably all know, there is no change in the salary of the fire chief in the proposed budget that you.
Well, because we haven't balanced it yet, Chief. I think I talked to you and I said, me and you had a discussion. I think we said after we go through all the things, we're going to see what we have left over and negotiate with you. I thought that's what we discussed.
Well, I guess I'm concerned that right now the proposed budget that you have does not have, and there's been no discussion. If I could,
no, me and you have discussed that. Me and you have discussed this, Chief.
Okay,
correct.
We had a discussion.
Several.
Correct.
Okay.
And my recollection of the last discussion was that I should make my point in the budget that is coming up, and that's why I'm here, to make the point for the budget that's coming up. So I want to read this because I think it's important from a historical perspective. On January 1st, 2008, I became the fire chief of the city of Windcrest. That process began when the previous fire chief, Tom Wynn, retired. The city advertised for a paid fire chief and accepted resumes and applications as would be expected. A paid fire chief for the city of Windcrest is not a new concept. In a letter dated June 25th, 2007, Tom Wynn stated, "The fire chief position in Windcrest has always been a paid position, so that aspect won't change." I said that was attached, and I apologize, but right before I came in, I had failed to attach it, but it is in our database. Selection committee was established that included city administrators, some city staff members, some volunteer firefighters, and some citizens. I don't remember exactly the selection committee, but I do remember that city administrator Ronnie Kane, Economic Development Corporation Director Ray Watson, Mr. Harold Woods, who was a citizen, and firefighters Paula Greenwood, Daniel Andrade, and Lee Winlet were all part of that committee. The committee received and considered several applications. I believe there were 20 or so potentials, including 3 from the Windcrest Volunteer Fire Department. All applicants were aware that the position was to be a paid fire chief, and I understood that the committee interviewed 3 outside applicants and 3 inside applicants. I'm aware that the 3 inside applicants were myself, Joe Moran, who was a fire marshal at the time, Andy Deason, who was a captain with the Volunteer Fire Department and a paid firefighter with San Antonio. The result of that selection committee was an offer to me, letter dated August 29, 2007. I was informed via that letter that I would begin on January 1st, 2008. Windcrest Volunteer Fire Association was also advised of the decision and unanimously approved the selection. I began volunteering in Windcrest Volunteer Fire Department on April 9, 2003. At the time of my selection as chief, I had 4 years, 8 months in the department. I had all the certifications and credentials required for the position. The state of Texas has an additional requirement, however, that it says that if you're a paid fire chief, that you have to be a head of department certification. To have that head of department certification, a volunteer firefighter must have 10 years experience. There is, however, a statute, Title 2713, Chapter 421, Rule 421.9, that allows for compensation not to exceed over federal minimum wage of 2,008 hours per year. At the time of my selection as fire chief, City Council was made aware of the limitations on reimbursement. It was clear at the time that I would be paid an appropriate salary when I met the tenure requirement. The budget for the city had been adopted for a paid fire chief and was adjusted to reflect the fact that I was restricted in compensation that I could accept. As far as members of the City Council, there were Jack Lenhart, who was a mayor, Garling Bach, who was a council member, Rick Bruns, who was a council member. Two of the council members have since passed away, Jim Tremblay and Charlotte Labasso. On January 1st, 2008, I began my tenure as the fire chief in Windcrest Volunteer Fire Department. This is a great department and exceeds standards set forth for volunteer fire departments. During my time here, we have, from the department perspective, voluntarily sought certification with the Texas Commission on Fire Protection, the governing body for paid to fire departments. We have been inspected twice since in 2011 to maintain that certification, normally reserved for paid departments. We updated all the standard operating guidelines. Most of them were 10 years old, 10 years or older when I arrived, and now are up to date and being revised again to keep up with the times. We developed a clear organizational structure outlining job description and responsibilities for fire officers. We implemented a certification program for firefighters not previously done that ensures that they have all the training requirements before they're put on the fire ground. We developed a driver training program that locally certified each driver and the apparatus that they were being qualified in. We oversaw an expansion of the dorm program that included additional house, in effect doubling the size and the capacity for the volunteer firefighters in our dorm program. As the emergency management coordinator, I personally updated 24 of our outdated emergency management plans required by the state of Texas. In 2010, the department was awarded the Emergency Management System EMS Unit of the Year for the state of Texas. I have served as the chairman of the Texas Emergency Services Retirement Plan for the last 2 years. I'm an active member of the Alamo Fire Chiefs Association, a group of firefighters in the San Antonio area. I coordinated the mutual aid agreement for the city of Windcrest to participate in the San Antonio area mutual aid agreement with other departments in order to provide mutual aid when needed. I was elected as the treasurer of the local active fire chiefs organization called Combined Emergency Services Organization, or CISO. From a professional perspective, I am certified by the Texas Commission on Fire Protection as a department head for fire suppression. I hold an intermediate certification with the Texas Commission. As far as I know, I'm the first fire chief to hold a certification with that commission. And the State Firemen and Fire Marshals Association, a regulatory agency for the volunteer fire departments, I hold several certifications with them, including Advanced Firefighter Instructor and Vehicle Extrication Tech 1 and 2. This October, I will complete the requirements for the Texas Fire Chiefs Academy that will give me a certification called Certified Fire Executive. As far as I know, I will be one of the only few chiefs of volunteer departments to complete this certification. I have attended classes at the National Fire Academy, including Instant Command of Initial Company Ops, Command and Control Decisions in Making of Multiple Alarm Emergencies. I've been accepted to attend a class in March 2014 called Command and Control of Fire Department Operations at Natural and Man-Made Disasters. I've completed multiple incident command training, including IS 100, 200, 300, 400, 401, and 704. I've completed training at the Texas A&M Emergency Operations Training called Management 314 Enhanced Incident Management, Unified Command and Control, a week-long course in disaster response. I hold a bachelor's degree in professional aviation from Louisiana Tech University and a master's of Science in Systems Management from the University of Southern California. On April 9, 2013, the restrictions imposed by the state of Texas are lifted. At that time, I was eligible for an appropriate compensation as fire chief. My research in most cities pay their fire chiefs approximately the same as they pay the police chief. The city of Windcrest enlisted public sector to provide salary surveys in 2008-2009. In both of those studies, the pay of the police and fire chiefs are comparable. I'm sure that there are some differences due to time on the job, certifications, etc. Of the 14 cities, 9 paid their fire chiefs equal to or more than the police chief, and in 5 the police chief was paid more than the fire chief. I was asked to do a more recent study. We did a Freedom of Information Act request for some cities in the area. The result of that average was the average pay for a fire chief was $76,482. And 2 of the cities, Universal City and Back Country Heights, who have selected their fire chief as the emergency management coordinator, have an average of $88,254. Using an average of $65,000 per year, the city of Windcrest has saved $260,000 by paying me minimum wage for the time I was chief. When I was selected as fire chief, I was employed by Lear Sigler at Randolph Air Force Base as a ground instructor for the Air Force Navigation School. The position at Randolph afforded me extra time, and that time was spent with the fire department. The position paid just under $80,000 with benefits. In October 2010, position moved to Pensacola, Florida. During that transition, I turned down an opportunity to move to Florida. It was my desire to be the fire chief for the city of Windcrest. Because of the dramatic reduction in pay, I sold all the leave and vacation time and put it aside to pay for mortgage during the time between 2010 and the end of the 10-year period, which ended in April of 2013. Our decision to stay effectively forfeited $200,000 in pay and resulted in the need to use vacation pay time for mortgage rather than use it for savings or other expenses. By any measure, I've done a great job and gone above and beyond for the city and the fire department. In the past 10 years, I responded to 7,863 emergency calls. That equals over 2 calls a day, 365 days a year. Our tracking system accounts for the time on emergency calls and in terms of minutes spent. The total time of events including training, for me is 17,848, which is 8,760 hours per year. So I've spent over 2 years of that 10 years responding to calls and training. That does not include regular office time doing work in the city. I've often said if you feel that you're indispensable, then just leave. You'll see that the position is filled. So it would be for the fire chief's position. The fire chief in the city of Windcrest is a unique position. It requires someone who will give their time all hours of the day, 365 days. It is much more difficult to provide 24/7 fire and medical coverage with volunteers than it is a paid staff. We provide professional level service with volunteers. It is my desire to remain the fire chief of Windcrest. I respectfully request that the city council fund the fire chief's position at appropriate salary in the budget being considered.
I just have a question to finance. I've been looking at the proposed budget at the fire department, and I believe it's at the moment at $59,000. Is it somewhere in that range for the fire department on salaries? It's
For salaries only.
okay. That $59,000. How many employees does that cover?
2 full-time and 1 part-time.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I want to know. I've just listened to Mrs. Dotson talking about merit, and we have an award-winning fire department. We have an outstanding fire chief, and I think we need to show it as a city that we appreciate him. That this is silly that for the city not to. I didn't realize it was minimum wage for that long, and I know. We've made so many budget adjustments through the last year, the fiscal year, and that's something we could have even taken care of earlier. And I really hope in your proposed budget that something has changed. before we, well, I don't want to speak to it again, but I would like to see it changed and really reflect the quality of working in the city of Windcrest. We have an outstanding fire chief. He is a wonderful mentor to the young firemen. You don't realize how wonderful it is to have him in place with these young folks. Besides the outstanding job, I didn't realize all that stuff, and I'm impressed. So please consider it. He really needs to have an adequate salary. Thank you.
Windcrest, as you all know, I've worked in the fire marshal's office for 8 years. Windcrest has always had an outstanding department. Heretofore, with Tom Wynn, of course, we had a different situation entirely. But we now have what amounts to a professional department, but we're paying the chief an amateur wage. And I don't think that's what we want to do. We do have a professional chief. The details that he read in the letter are sufficient to justify that. And I think that the comparison of his salary to the other chiefs around would tell us what we ought to do. And I didn't register the exact differences, but let's say between $60,000 and $80,000, something like that. I suggest that we do what we're supposed to do for the professional chief that we have.
Well, it definitely is going to be addressed. The chief knows it's going to be addressed. And I'll hasten to say, in 2 years as mayor, I don't know of any mayor that's worked more with the chief than I have. And he knows how I feel about him. It will be addressed.
What does that mean in terms of
It's going to be addressed. I don't vote. It's going to be addressed.
When?
During the budget.
Okay, that's comfortable.
All right.
I'm Pauline Smith. I live at 533 Balfour. We had a horrendous fire across the street from my house. And I was out there quite a bit trying to see what the firemen were doing and what they needed and so forth. And a few of them used my house for a restroom, which was wonderful. I told them they could. And I can't remember exactly when the fire started. It was like 8:30 or 9 o'clock, around that time in the evening or at night. It went on and on and on all night. And I was out there a lot, back and forth in the house. And I think they left around 4 o'clock in the morning. Dan was there when it began, when it ended. And somebody who is a retired fireman from here told me that whenever there's a fire, day or night, Dan is there. And I truly believe that. And it would be horrible if some other city got our wonderful fire chief. So please, do what you can to give him a decent salary. Thank you.
Mayor, I move for adjournment.
Okay, we'll adjourn at 8:03.